My son-in-law slapped my daughter across the face at Thanksgiving dinner. And his mother laughed. Yeah, you heard that right. Right there at my table. My house. My food still warm on the plates. Turkey barely carved. Cranberry sauce untouched. And my little girl, my baby, standing there frozen, her cheek turning red while that woman, her mother-in-law, actually smiled like it was some kind of joke. I didn't react right away. Not because I didn't want to, but because something inside me went cold. You know that kind of cold? The kind that doesn't scream, it calculates. But before I tell you what I did next, if you believe family should protect, not destroy, go ahead and subscribe. Because this story, it's not just about what happened that night. It's about what happened after. And trust me, I didn't let it go. My name is Evelyn Carter. I'm 67 years old, born and raised in Ohio, and I've lived long enough to know one thing for certain. You don't raise a daughter for decades just to watch someone break her in seconds. Thanksgiving had always been my thing. Every year, same table, same dishes, same traditions. I still use the same handwritten recipe cards from the 80s. My husband Daniel always joked that even if the world ended, I'd still be basting a turkey somewhere. That night, everything looked perfect on the surface. Candles lit. Soft jazz playing in the background. My daughter Lauren, sitting across from me in that cream sweater I bought her last Christmas. She looked tired. I noticed that immediately. There was a heaviness in her eyes she didn't have a year ago. And then there was him. Jason. Her husband. Polished on the outside. Charming when he wanted to be. The kind of man who shakes your hand a little too firmly and smiles just a little too long. And his mother, Diane. The type who watches everything. Judges everything. Smiles without warmth. Dinner started normal enough. Small talk. Work stories. A few awkward laughs. But I could feel something under the surface, like tension you can't quite name but you know it's there. Then it happened. It was over something stupid. Lauren forgot to bring out the gravy. That's it. That's what triggered him. Jason leaned back in his chair, looked at her and said, "Seriously? You had one job tonight." His tone sharp. Disrespectful. I saw Lauren stiffen. She stood up quickly, murmuring, "I'll get it, sorry." And then before she could even take 2 steps, smack. The sound echoed through the room. For a second nobody moved. Lauren's head snapped slightly to the side. Her hand flew to her cheek. Her eyes wide, shocked, like her brain hadn't caught up with what just happened. And then I heard it. A small laugh. Diane. She actually laughed. "Oh, Jason," she said, shaking her head like this was some harmless moment. "You've always had such a temper." Like it was cute. Like it was normal. That's when something inside me shifted. I slowly put my fork down. Very slowly. Daniel, my husband, looked at me from across the table. He knows me better than anyone. He saw it immediately. That silence. That stillness. That meant someone had just made a very big mistake. Jason didn't apologize. Didn't even look sorry. He just sat there like nothing happened, like he had every right in the world. Lauren whispered, "I'm fine." But her voice was shaking. And that broke something in me. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just permanently. I stood up. Walked over to her. Gently took her face in my hands. Her skin was warm. That mark already forming. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just looked at Jason. And then at Diane. And I said very calmly, "You need to leave." Jason scoffed. "Excuse me." "You heard me," I said, my voice steady. "Get out of my house." Diane's smile faded just a little. "Now, Evelyn, let's not overreact." I turned my head slowly toward her. That cold inside me? It sharpened. Because in that moment I knew something very clearly. This wasn't the first time. And it was damn sure going to be the last. I gently brushed her hair back and whispered, "I've got you." But in my mind, I was already reaching for my phone. 'Cause what Jason didn't know yet was that I wasn't just a grandmother. I was a woman with one very powerful connection. And one phone call was about to change everything. I made the call at 9:42 p.m. I remember the time because the clock above the stove was still blinking from a power flicker earlier that day. And for some reason that tiny detail stuck in my mind while everything else shifted. Lauren was upstairs in her old bedroom, curled up on the same bed she used as a teenager. The same room where she used to cry over school drama, Heartbreaks, little things that felt big back then. But this was different. This wasn't teenage pain. This was fear. And I had seen enough of life to recognize it instantly. Daniel stood in the kitchen, hands resting on the counter, watching me quietly as I picked up my phone. He didn't ask what I was doing. He already knew. After 42 years of marriage, he knew exactly what kind of silence this was. The kind that comes before something serious. I stepped into the hallway, away from Lauren, and dialed. 1 ring. 2. Then his voice came through, calm and steady as ever. Evelyn. I exhaled slowly. Daniel, we have a situation. Now let me explain something. My husband, Daniel Carter, is not just any lawyer. He doesn't do divorces. He doesn't do small cases. He's the kind of attorney people call when things are already bad and about to get worse. Corporate law, litigation, power plays. The kind of man who doesn't raise his voice because he doesn't need to. He listens. And then he acts. What happened? He asked. I didn't dramatize it. Didn't exaggerate. I just told him exactly what I saw. Jason slapped Lauren. At the dinner table. In front of everyone. And his mother laughed. There was a pause. Not long. But long enough. The kind of pause where you can feel someone processing, calculating. Then he asked one question. Has this happened before? I looked toward the stairs. Listen. Lauren was still crying softly upstairs. Yes, I said quietly. I'm certain of it. Another pause. Then Daniel spoke again, and this time his tone had changed. Not louder. Just colder. Put Lauren on the phone when she's ready, he said. And Evelyn. Yes. No one touches my daughter. And just like that, it started. About an hour later, Lauren came downstairs. Her eyes were red, her face pale, but there was something else there too. Relief. Like she was finally somewhere safe. I handed her the phone. It's your father. She hesitated. Not because she didn't want to talk to him, but because I think deep down she knew what this meant. This wasn't something you could take back. Once Daniel stepped in, things didn't go halfway. They went all the way. She took the phone slowly. Hi, Dad. Her voice cracked. And I watched her carefully as she spoke. First she tried to downplay it. I'm okay. It's not a big deal. But Daniel didn't let that stand. Even from across the room, I could hear his tone, firm, controlled. Lauren, tell me the truth. Silence. Then I saw it happen. That moment when someone stops pretending. Her shoulders dropped. Her guard broke. And everything came out. Not just tonight. Not just the slap. Everything. The arguments. The control. The way Jason would snap at her over small things. The way he made her feel like she was always wrong. Always less. And then the part that made my hands curl into fists without me even realizing it. He's done it before, she whispered. That was it. That was the moment. I didn't need to hear anything else. Lauren cried as she spoke, her voice shaking, years of fear and silence finally spilling out. Daniel didn't interrupt. Didn't react emotionally. He just listened. Carefully. Completely. When she finally finished, there was a long silence on the line. Then he said something I will never forget. Okay. Just that. Okay. But I've been married to that man long enough to know that okay didn't mean things were fine. It meant he had a plan. Lauren handed the phone back to me, her hands trembling. Mom, what's going to happen? I placed a hand on her cheek, the same cheek that had been struck just hours ago. And I said the only thing that mattered. What should have happened a long time ago? She looked at me confused, scared, but also hopeful. And that broke my heart all over again. No woman should have to hope for protection from her own family. That should be a given. Daniel spoke to me briefly after. I'm booking a flight, he said. I'll be there in the morning. You don't have to. I do. His tone left no room for argument. Then he added something that sent a chill down my spine. I want Jason's full name. Workplace. Everything you know. I gave it to him. Every detail. And when I finished, he went quiet again. Then very calmly. Evelyn, by this time tomorrow, things are going to look very different. That night, none of us slept much. Lauren stayed close to me. Daniel worked from the study, making calls, sending emails, pulling strings I didn't even fully understand. I could hear his voice through the door sometimes, low, precise, controlled. No shouting. No anger. Just decisions being made. Real ones. The kind that don't get undone. At 6:15 a.m. the next morning my phone buzzed. A message from Daniel. On my way. 8:40 arrival. I showed it to Lauren. She nodded slowly. Mom, is he really going to fix this? I looked at her, really looked at her. At the bruised trust in her eyes. At the years of quiet suffering she never told me about. And I answered honestly. No, I said softly. I think he's going to end it. And right at that moment, Jason made the biggest mistake of his life. Because while we were sitting there waiting, he was already trying to control the narrative. Trying to spin the story. Trying to make himself the victim. What he didn't know, Daniel had already started pulling on threads that were about to unravel everything. Jason tried to rewrite the story before we even finished our morning coffee. That's how men like him survive. Not by fixing what they've done, but by twisting it until they look like the victim. At 7:12 a.m., Lauren's phone buzzed. She was sitting at the kitchen table, wrapped in one of my old cardigans, staring at a cup of coffee she hadn't touched. When she saw his name on the screen, her whole body tensed. That reaction alone told me more than any words ever could. What does it say? I asked gently. She didn't answer right away. Just stared at the message, like she was bracing herself. Then she read it out loud. I don't know what kind of scene you're trying to create, but you embarrassed me in front of my family. You overreacted. You always do this. Call me when you're ready to act like an adult. I felt something dark settle in my chest. Not rage. Not yet. Just clarity. Lauren looked up at me confused. Maybe I did overreact. No. I said it immediately. Firm. Certain. No, you didn't. She blinked, like she needed to hear that more than she realized. That man hit you. I continued, my voice steady. There is no version of that where you are the problem. She swallowed hard. And then her phone buzzed again. Another message. This time from Diane. Lauren hesitated, then opened it. Sweetheart, Jason was just stressed. You know how he gets. You shouldn't have made a big deal out of it in front of everyone. These things happen in marriage. You need to be more understanding. I actually let out a small, humorless laugh. There it is, I muttered. Lauren looked at me. What? The training, I said quietly. That's not comfort. That's conditioning. She stared at the screen again, her expression slowly changing, like pieces were clicking into place. Right then, Daniel walked into the kitchen, still in his dress shirt, tie slightly loosened, phone in hand. He had that look on his face, the one I've seen maybe 5 times in 40 years. The look that means someone is about to regret underestimating him. He didn't ask what was going on. He just held out his hand. Phone. Lauren handed it to him without a word. He read both messages. Once. Then again. His expression didn't change. But I saw it in his eyes. That cold focus. That quiet, surgical kind of anger. He handed the phone back. Do not respond, he said. Lauren nodded immediately. Okay. Then he turned to me. I need 10 minutes. And just like that, he was back in the study. Door closed. I've learned something about my husband over the years. When he says 10 minutes, it's never just 10 minutes. It's 10 minutes of something starting. At exactly 7:32 a.m., the first call came in. Not to us. To Jason. We didn't know it yet, but we would soon. Because by 8:05, everything started shifting. Lauren's phone rang again. She flinched at first, then saw it wasn't Jason. It was one of his co-workers. She frowned. Why is Mark calling me? Answer it, I said. She hesitated, then picked up. Hello. There was a pause. Then confusion spread across her face. What? What do you mean? She stood up slowly. I don't know, no. I'm not there. What happened? My heart started beating a little faster. What is it? I asked quietly. She held up a finger, still listening. Then finally, okay, thank you for telling me. She hung up. For a moment, she just stood there, processing. Lauren. I stepped closer. What happened? She looked at me stunned. Jason's been suspended. Silence. What? I said. HR called him into a meeting this morning, she explained. Apparently there's been a complaint filed, something about workplace misconduct, and they're opening an investigation. I felt it. That shift. The first domino. Daniel walked back into the kitchen like nothing had happened. Like this was just another morning. But I knew better. He poured himself a cup of coffee. Measured. Lauren stared at him. Dad, did you? He didn't look up. I made a call, he said simply. That's all you're going to say? I asked, raising an eyebrow. Now he looked at me. And there was the smallest hint of something in his expression. Not pride. Not satisfaction. Just certainty. He works in a company with a strict code of conduct, Daniel said. Domestic violence allegations tend to raise concerns. Lauren's eyes widened. You reported him? Daniel set his cup down. I ensured the right people started asking the right questions. That was his way. Never messy. Never loud. Just effective. Lauren sat down slowly. I didn't think it would go this far. I knelt beside her. It's already gone too far, I said softly. We're just finally catching up to it. Her phone buzzed again. Jason. Calling. Over and over. She looked at Daniel. He shook his head once. No. The calls kept coming. Then stopped. And a message came through. This time different. No arrogance. No control. Just panic. What did you do? Why is my company calling me into HR? Lauren, you need to fix this now. I almost smiled. Almost. Because there it was. The moment he realized. He wasn't in control anymore. Daniel picked up his briefcase. I'm heading out, he said. Where? I asked. He looked at me. At 9:30, he said calmly. I have a meeting with someone who knows Jason very well. Lauren frowned. Who? Daniel adjusted his cuffs. His boss. And just like that, the game changed completely. Because Jason thought this was a private issue. A family matter. Something he could control behind closed doors. What he didn't understand yet was that Daniel had just taken it out of the house and into the real world, where consequences don't stay quiet. By 9:30 that morning, Daniel was already sitting across from Jason's boss. And Jason? He had no idea what was about to hit him. The house felt different after Daniel left. Quieter, but not peaceful. It was the kind of silence where something is happening, just not in front of you. Lauren sat on the couch, her phone in her lap, staring at it like it might explode. Mom, she said softly. Is this really okay? I knew what she meant. Not the legal side. The emotional side. The guilt. The doubt. The years of being told to keep things private. Don't make problems bigger than they are. Handle it inside the marriage. I sat beside her and took her hand. Let me ask you something, I said gently. She looked at me. If it was your daughter sitting here, telling you her husband hit her, what would you do? She didn't even hesitate. I'd destroy him, she whispered. I nodded slowly. Exactly. Her eyes filled again, but this time, not just with pain, with something stronger, something steadier. At 10:07 a.m., Daniel texted me. Meeting started. That was it. No details. No drama. Just information. I showed it to Lauren. She exhaled slowly, like she didn't realize she'd been holding her breath. Now let me tell you something about men like Jason. They build their lives on image. Good job. Clean reputation. Charming in public. People like that? They don't expect exposure. Because they think they've covered everything. What they forget is that all it takes is one person who doesn't play by their rules. And Daniel? He doesn't play. At 10:42 a.m., my phone rang. It was Daniel. I answered immediately. Yes. Put me on speaker, he said. I did. Lauren sat up straight beside me. Daniel's voice came through calm, but there was an edge to it now. I just finished speaking with Mr. Reynolds, he said. Jason's boss. And? I asked. There was a brief pause. Then Daniel said something that made Lauren's hand tighten around mine. Jason is not who he pretends to be at work. Lauren's brow furrowed. What do you mean? Daniel continued. There have been prior complaints, he said. Nothing that escalated formally, but enough to establish a pattern. My stomach turned. What kind of complaints? Verbal aggression. Intimidation. One incident involving a female colleague that was quietly handled internally. Lauren's face went pale. He told me that woman was lying, she whispered. Daniel didn't respond to that directly. Instead he said, I provided Mr. Reynolds with documentation. I frowned. What documentation? Now Daniel's voice dropped slightly. Evidence. Lauren looked at me, confused. Mom, what evidence? I was about to ask the same thing when Daniel continued. Last night, while you and Lauren were resting, I made a few additional calls. Of course he did. That included speaking with someone from Jason's previous employer. Lauren's eyes widened. He told me he left that job for a better opportunity. Daniel's response was immediate. He was asked to resign. Silence. Heavy. Thick. Lauren shook her head slowly. No, that's not what he said. I'm sure it isn't, Daniel replied calmly. I felt it again. That cold clarity. The kind that doesn't shock you. It confirms what you already feared. What happens now? I asked. Daniel didn't hesitate. His company has opened a formal investigation, he said. Effective immediately, he's been placed on administrative leave. Lauren covered her mouth with her hand. They're also reviewing his employment history and the previous internal complaints. I leaned back slightly. So this isn't just about what happened last night anymore. No, Daniel said. It's about who he is. Lauren's phone buzzed again. This time she didn't flinch. She just picked it up and looked at the screen. Jason. Another message. She read it out loud, her voice steadier now. Lauren, this is getting out of control. You need to tell them it was a misunderstanding. You're ruining my life. I let out a slow breath. There it was again. Not I'm sorry. Not are you okay? Just, you're ruining my life. I looked at her. Do you see it now? She nodded slowly. Yeah. Ido. Daniel spoke again. I'll be home in about an hour, he said. There are a few more things we need to do. Lauren swallowed. Like what? There was a brief pause. Then Daniel said very clearly, make sure he never gets the chance to do this again. After the call ended, the house felt different. Not heavy anymore. Not tense. Just focused. Like everything had a direction now. Lauren sat quietly for a moment. Then she looked at me. Mom. Yes, sweetheart. Her voice was softer now, but stronger. What if he shows up here? I didn't even hesitate. He won't. How do you know? I held her gaze. Because your father is already 10 steps ahead of him. And right on cue. At exactly 11:18 a.m., there was a loud knock on the front door. Lauren froze. My heart didn't race. Didn't panic. Because somehow, I already knew. Jason had just realized. He was losing everything. And desperate men? They don't think clearly. I stood up slowly. Walked toward the door. And before I even opened it, I said, loud enough for him to hear through the wood, you made a very bad mistake coming here. Jason was standing on my doorstep. And for the first time since I'd known him, he didn't look in control. I opened the door slowly. Didn't rush. Didn't react. I just stood there looking at him. And what I saw wasn't the polished, confident man my daughter married. This version was different. Hair slightly messy. Tie loosened. Eyes restless, scanning past me, trying to see inside the house. Trying to find her. Evelyn, he said quickly, forcing a tight smile. We need to talk. No epaleji. No hesitation. Just urgency. Like he was already losing something, and scrambling to grab it back. I didn't move. You don't get to stand on my porch and tell me what we need, I said calmly. His jaw tightened. Where's Lauren? That's when I took one small step forward, just enough to block his view completely. Not available. His patience snapped just a little. Look, whatever she told you. I held up my hand. No, I said, my voice quiet but sharp. You don't get to start with excuses. For a second, we just stood there. Then he exhaled hard, running a hand through his hair. Okay, fine. I messed up last night. I shouldn't have hit her. Shouldn't have hit her. Like it was a minor mistake. Like forgetting an anniversary. I felt that cold inside me again. Stronger now. And? I asked. He blinked. And what? And that's it. I said. That's all you've got? His frustration flared. What do you want from me, Evelyn? I said I shouldn't have done it. I leaned slightly closer. I want you to understand something very clearly. I said, my voice low. You didn't mess up. You crossed a line you don't come back from. Behind me, I could feel movement. Lauren. I didn't turn around. But I knew she was there. Listening. Watching. Jason's eyes shifted past me again. Lauren, he called out, raising his voice. We need to talk about this like adults. That word again. Adults. The same word he used in that message. Control disguised as maturity. I stepped fully into the doorway now. No. I said firmly. You don't get to talk to her. His expression hardened. You can't keep her from me. I tilted my head slightly. Watch me. For a second I saw it. That flicker of anger. The same anger from last night. The same one that made him raise his hand. But this time, he stopped himself. Because this wasn't his house. And I wasn't his wife. His phone buzzed. He ignored it. Then buzzed again. And again. Finally he pulled it out, glancing at the screen. And whatever he saw changed everything. His face dropped. The color drained. What? I said calmly. He didn't answer. Just stared at the phone like it had just betrayed him. Jason, I pressed. What is it? He looked up at me. And for the first time, I saw fear. Real fear. They terminated me, he said quietly. Silence. Even the air felt still. Lauren stepped closer behind me. I could feel her presence now. Terminated, she repeated softly. Jason nodded slowly, still in shock. They said effective immediately, violation of company conduct policies. He looked at me again, his voice rising slightly. You did this. I didn't blink. No, I said. You did. He took a step forward. Not aggressive. Not yet. Just desperate. Lauren, he said, his voice softer now, almost pleading. You have to fix this. Just tell them it was a misunderstanding. Tell them you overreacted. Stop. That word didn't come from me. It came from behind me. Lauren. Her voice wasn't shaking anymore. I stepped slightly to the side. Just enough for her to be seen. Jason froze when he saw her. Her cheeks still faintly marked. Her eyes clear now. Steady. No, she said, shaking her head slowly. I'm not fixing anything for you. He blinked, like he didn't recognize her. Lauren, don't do this. I'm not doing anything, she replied. I'm just not protecting you anymore. That hit him harder than anything else. I could see it. Because men like him, they depend on silence. On forgiveness. On second chances they never deserve. His voice cracked slightly. You're throwing everything away. Over one mistake? Lauren took a small step forward. And this time, there was no fear in her. No, she said quietly. I'm finally choosing myself, after 1,000 of yours. That was it. That was the moment. The shift. The end of whatever control he thought he still had. His expression changed again. From pleading to angry, cold. You think this is over? He said under his breath. You think you've won? I stepped forward immediately. This isn't a game, I said sharply. And you don't walk away from this like nothing happened. He laughed bitterly. What are you going to do? Ruin my life completely? I held his gaze. No, I said calmly. You're going to do that all by yourself. Right then. Another car pulled up outside. Jason turned slightly, confused. A black sedan. Clean. Official. The kind of car that doesn't show up for casual visits. The door opened. And Daniel stepped out. Calm as ever. Suit perfect. Expression unreadable. Jason's posture shifted instantly. Like prey realizing the real threat had just arrived. Daniel walked up the path slowly. No ruse. No emotion. Just presence. He stopped beside me. Looked at Jason once. Up and down. Measured. Then said very quietly, "You should have kept your hands to yourself." Jason swallowed. You're behind all this." Daniel adjusted his cuff slightly. "I'm just getting started." And in that moment, Jason finally understood. This wasn't about one slap. This wasn't about one night. This was about every lie, every act, every hidden piece of who he really was, coming to light. And Daniel? He hadn't even made his real move yet. Jason thought losing his job was the worst thing that could happen to him. He was wrong. That was just the door opening. Daniel didn't raise his voice, didn't step closer than necessary. He just stood there, calm as ever, like this was a business meeting, not the moment a man's life was starting to fall apart. Jason tried to recover some control. You could see it in the way he straightened his shoulders, the way he forced his tone to sound steady. "This has gone far enough," he said, glancing between Daniel and Lauren. "I lost my job. You've made your point." Daniel tilted his head slightly. "My point," he repeated. There was something almost unsettling about how composed he was. "You think this is about making a point?" Jason didn't answer. Because deep down, he already knew the answer. Lauren stood beside me, quiet but strong. Not hiding anymore. Not shrinking. And I could feel it, that shift in her. She wasn't the same woman who walked into this house last night. She was awake now. Daniel reached into his briefcase and pulled out a thin folder. Clean. Organized. Deliberate. He didn't hand it to Jason. He just held it. "You've spent a long time building a version of yourself," Daniel said calmly. "Respectable. Controlled. Successful." Jason scoffed lightly, trying to dismiss it. "I am those things." Daniel didn't react. Instead, he opened the folder. "And yet," he continued, "this file says otherwise." Jason's jaw tightened. "What is that supposed to be?" Daniel flipped the first page. "Statements," he said. "From your former colleagues." Another page. "Documentation from your previous employer." Another. "And a timeline of complaints your current company chose to overlook, until now." Jason's face started to change. Not anger. Not arrogance. Something else. Recognition. "You've been getting away with this behavior for years," Daniel said. "Different places. Different people. Same pattern." "That's not," Jason started. Daniel raised one finger. And Jason stopped talking. "Just like that. You intimidate," Daniel continued. "You control. You push until someone breaks, or stays quiet." He closed the folder gently. "But eventually someone doesn't." Lauren's hand brushed mine. Not out of fear. Out of grounding. She was steady now. Listening. Seeing everything clearly. Jason let out a short, bitter laugh. "So what?" he snapped. "You've got paperwork. That doesn't prove anything." Daniel looked at him for a long moment. Then said something that made the air feel colder. "It proves enough." Jason frowned. "Enough for what?" Daniel's voice didn't change. "For a restraining order." Silence. Real silence. The kind that presses in on your chest. Lauren inhaled sharply. Jason blinked. What?" "You heard me," Daniel said. "Temporary, effective immediately. Permanent, once the hearing concludes." Jason shook his head, stepping back slightly. "That's ridiculous. You can't just." "I already have," Daniel said. And just like that, everything shifted again. Jason looked between all of us. Confused. Cornered. "You're serious?" he asked, his voice dropping. Daniel didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. Tapped the screen once. Then turned it toward Jason. "I don't make empty statements." Jason leaned in slightly despite himself. And whatever he saw on that screen made him go completely still. What is that?" he asked quietly. Daniel lowered the phone. "That," he said, "is a filed petition. Signed. Submitted. And already being processed." Jason's breathing changed. Faster now. Uneven. "You're trying to destroy me," he said. Daniel met his gaze. "No," he replied. "I'm making sure you don't destroy anyone else." For the first time, Jason didn't have a response. Lauren stepped forward then. Just one step. But it mattered. Because now, she wasn't behind me anymore. She was beside us. Facing him. I asked you so many times to stop, she said softly. To just treat me with respect. Jason looked at her, something almost desperate in his eyes now. I can change, he said quickly. Lauren, I swear, this won't happen again. She shook her head. No, she said. You don't get to promise me things after you've already shown me who you are. That hit him. You could see it land. Because there was nothing left to argue. Nothing left to twist. Daniel closed his briefcase. This is the part where you leave, he said calmly. Jason didn't move. Or what? He muttered. Daniel didn't raise his voice. Didn't step closer. He just said it. Or I make one more call. And something in that sentence, the certainty, the quiet threat of it, made Jason understand. Whatever power he thought he had left was gone. He looked at Lauren one last time, like he was searching for something. Sympathy, doubt, weakness. But he didn't find any. So instead, he turned, walked down the path, got into his car, and drove away. We stood there in silence for a moment, watching him disappear. And for the first time since last night, I felt something lift. Lauren exhaled slowly. Is it over? She asked. Daniel looked straight ahead. No, he said. I turned to him. What else is there? He glanced at me. And for the first time, there was a hint of something deeper in his expression. Something heavier. His mother, he said. And just like that, I remembered her laugh. That cold, dismissive laugh. When my daughter was hurting, Daniel adjusted his jacket. I have a meeting this afternoon, he added. With her. Lauren's eyes widened. Diane. Daniel nodded once. Yes. And in that moment, I knew. This wasn't just about Jason anymore. Because some lessons don't stop with one person. I never forgot the sound of Diane laughing. Not the words. Not the moment. Just that sound. Cold. Sharp. Dismissive. Like my daughter's pain was entertainment. And now, she was about to sit across from my husband. Alone. Daniel left the house just after noon. Same calm presence. Same quiet focus. But I knew that look. He wasn't going to argue. He wasn't going to yell. He was going to dismantle her. Piece by piece. Lauren stayed close to me after he left. We didn't talk much. Didn't need to. There's a certain kind of understanding that forms after something like this, where words just feel unnecessary. But I could tell she was thinking about it. About Diane. About that dinner. Mom, she said softly, breaking the silence. Yeah. Why would she laugh? That question. It hit deeper than everything else. Because it wasn't about anger. It was about understanding. I looked at her carefully. Because some people don't see abuse as wrong, I said. They see it as normal. She frowned slightly. How? I took a slow breath. Because they've either lived it, or allowed it for so long that it stops shocking them. Lauren sat with that. Processing. But that doesn't make it okay, she said. No. Y replió firmly. It doesn't. At 1:18 p.m., Daniel texted. I'm here. That was it. Short. Direct. Lauren looked at me. Where is he meeting her? I gave a small, knowing look. Somewhere she can't control the room. Now let me tell you something about people like Diane. They thrive in familiar spaces. Their house. Their table. Their rules. That's where they feel powerful. Take them out of that environment, and suddenly, they're not so comfortable anymore. At 1:47 p.m., my phone rang. Daniel. I answered immediately. Yes. Put me on speaker. I did. Lauren sat up straighter beside me. Daniel's voice came through steady as ever. I'm sitting with Diane, he said. And then, another voice. Diane. Oh please, don't make this into something dramatic, she said, her tone already defensive. We're all adults here. I felt my jaw tighten. Same tone. Same dismissiveness. Daniel didn't react. Mrs. Whitmore, he said calmly. You laughed when your son struck my daughter. A pause. Then Diane sighed. Oh, for heaven's sake, she said. It was a tense moment. Things happen. You're blowing this out of proportion. Lauren's hand curled into a fist. I placed my hand over hers. Steady. Daniel's voice didn't change. No, he said. What's happening right now is the consequence of years of proportion being ignored. Diane let out a short laugh. There you go again with the drama. Jason made a mistake. It's not the end of the world. And that's when Daniel shifted. Not louder. Not emotional. Just precise. Your son has been terminated from his job, he said. Silence. Real silence. Diane didn't speak for a second. Then, what? She snapped. He is also currently under formal investigation, Daniel continued. And a restraining order has been filed on behalf of my daughter. Another pause. Longer this time. When Diane spoke again, her tone had changed. Slightly. What exactly are you trying to do? She asked. Daniel didn't hesitate. Ensure accountability. She scoffed. This is ridiculous. You're trying to ruin his future over one incident. Daniel replied immediately. No, he said. I'm addressing a pattern. There was a shift then. Subtle, but real. Because for the first time, Diane didn't have a quick comeback. You don't understand how relationships work, she said finally, but her voice wasn't as sharp now. People argue. People lose control sometimes. Daniel's response came like a quiet hammer. People who respect their partners do not strike them. Lauren exhaled slowly beside me. Like she needed to hear that. Like it settled something inside her. Diane tried again. You're turning this into a legal circus, she said. Families handle things privately. Daniel's tone stayed even. Families protect their own, he said. They don't excuse harm. Another silence. And this time, it stretched. When Diane spoke again, something was different. Not softer, but less certain. What do you want? She asked. There it was. Not denial. Not dismissal. A question. Daniel didn't rush his answer. I want you to understand something clearly, he said. A pause. Your influence over your son ends here. Diane inhaled sharply. You don't get to dictate how I raise my. I'm not dictating, Daniel interrupted calmly. I'm informing. That word hung in the air. Informing. Not asking. Not negotiating. You enabled this behavior, Daniel continued. Whether knowingly or not. That ends now. Diane's voice rose slightly. You can't just accuse me. I'm not accusing, Daniel said. I'm stating a fact. Another pause. And this one? It felt different. Heavier. Because the confidence she walked in with was starting to crack. You think you've won something here, she said quietly. Daniel responded without hesitation. This isn't about winning. Then a beat. It's about making sure your son never feels entitled to raise his hand again. Silence. No comeback. No laughter. Nothing. After a few seconds, Daniel spoke again. This conversation is over, he said. Any further communication will go through legal channels. And just like that, the call ended. Lauren sat there, staring at the phone. Mom, she whispered. Yeah. I don't think she expected that. I gave a small, knowing nod. No, I said. People like her never do. A few minutes later, Daniel texted again. On my way back. Lauren leaned back against the couch. For the first time, she looked lighter. Not completely healed. Not yet. But free. But as I sat there, thinking it through, I realized something. This wasn't just about consequences anymore. This was about exposure. Truth coming out. Patterns being seen. And something told me, Jason wasn't done making mistakes yet. Because men like him, when they lose control, they don't always walk away quietly. Jason didn't walk away quietly. Men like him never do. It started just after 6 p.m. The sun was setting. The house finally felt calm. And for the first time in 2 days, Lauren had fallen asleep on the couch. Peaceful. Safe. Something she hadn't felt in a long time. I was in the kitchen rinsing dishes when Daniel walked in, fresh from his meeting, jacket off, sleeves rolled slightly. He looked at Lauren for a moment. Really looked at her. Then said quietly, she's exhausted. I nodded. She's finally breathing. For a second, It felt like maybe the worst had passed. Like maybe we had done enough. Then the phone rang. Not Lauren's. Mine. A known number. I almost ignored it. Almost. But something told me not to. So I answered. Hello. At first there was nothing. Just breathing. Heavy. Uneven. And then. You think you're smart. Jason. I felt it immediately. That shift. That tension snapping back into place. Jason, I said calmly, stepping away from the living room. This is not a good idea. He laughed. But it wasn't the same laugh. Not controlled. Not polished. This one was cracked. You took everything from me, he said. My job, my reputation. I leaned against the counter, steadying my voice. No. Iraplia. You lost those on your own. Behind me, I could hear movement. Daniel. He had already picked up on the tone. On the danger. He didn't interrupt. Just listened. Jason's voice dropped. Cold now. You think this is over? He said. You think you can just destroy my life and sit there like nothing's going to happen? I didn't respond immediately. Because this wasn't about arguing anymore. This was about control. And he was losing it. Jason, I said carefully, you need to stop calling this number. He ignored that completely. You turned her against me, he continued. She was fine before you got involved. That made something in me harden. She was surviving, I said. There's a difference. There was a pause. Then. A sound. A car door. My heart dropped. Where are you? I asked sharply. He didn't answer. But I already knew. Daniel stepped closer, his voice low but firm. Put it on speaker. I did. Jason spoke again. I just want to talk, he said. Face to face. Like we should have done from the beginning. Daniel finally spoke. No, he said calmly. You don't. Jason went quiet for a second. Then. Of course you'd hide behind lawyers and paperwork, he snapped. That's all you people do. Daniel didn't react to the insult. He just said one thing. You're violating a pending restraining order. Silence. Then a scoff. It's not even finalized yet. Daniel's response was immediate. That doesn't make this smart. And that's when we heard it. Through the phone. A car engine shutting off. Close. Too close. I didn't wait. I moved to the window. Pulled the curtain back slightly. And there it was. His car. Parked right across the street. My chest tightened. He's here, I said quietly. Lauren stirred on the couch behind us. Not fully awake yet. But close. Jason's voice came through the phone again. Yeah, he said. I'm here. Like it was normal. Like this was okay. Daniel's tone changed. Not louder. But sharper. Listen to me carefully, he said. You need to leave. Right now. Jason laughed again. You think I'm scared of you? No, Daniel replied calmly. I think you're about to make a mistake you can't undo. Lauren sat up suddenly. Her eyes went straight to me. Mom, what's going on? I didn't want to say it. But I didn't lie. He's outside. Her face went pale. That fear. It flickered back. Just for a second. Jason's voice cut through again. Lauren, he called out through the phone louder now. Come outside. We need to talk. Daniel stepped closer to me. Hang up, he said quietly. I did. The house went silent. But not peaceful. Not anymore. Lauren stood up slowly. No, she whispered, shaking her head. No. I moved to her immediately. He's not coming in, I said firmly. You're safe. But even as I said it, I knew something had changed. This wasn't just emotional anymore. This was crossing into something else. Something dangerous. Daniel had already picked up his phone. Dialing. Precise. Quick. This is Daniel Carter, he said calmly when the line connected. I need an officer dispatched immediately. Lauren looked at him. You're calling the police? Daniel met her eyes. Yes. Outside. A car door slammed. We all froze. Then footsteps. On the pavement. Getting closer. Lauren grabbed my arm. Mom. I'm here, I said, holding her tight. Daniel didn't move. Didn't panic. He just stood there. Listening. Calculating. Waiting. And then, a loud knock. Not polite. Not patient. Hard. Demanding. Lauren. Jason's voice shouted from the other side of the door. Open the door. Lauren flinched. I felt it. The knock came again. Louder this time. Don't do this, he yelled. Don't make this worse than it already is. Daniel stepped forward. Every movement controlled. Every step deliberate. He stopped right at the door. Close enough to be heard. But not opening it. You need to leave, he said, his voice calm but firm. Jason laughed bitterly from the other side. Or what? Daniel didn't hesitate. Or the next person you speak to won't be me. Silence. Just for a second. Then, sirens. Faint at first. But getting closer. And that's when everything shifted. Because for the first time, Jason wasn't in control of the situation outside either. The knocking stopped. The footsteps moved. Fussed. I looked out the window again. And saw him. Getting back into his car. Panic written all over him. The sirens got louder. Closer. Lauren exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for hours. He's leaving, she whispered. Daniel stepped back from the door. Calm as ever. He doesn't have a choice. But as I watched Jason's car pull away, I felt something settle deep in my chest. Not fear. Not anymore. Finality. Because now, this wasn't just a family matter. This wasn't just emotional damage. This was documented. Reported. Witnessed. And Jason had just made the worst mistake of all. He turned his private abuse into a public case. The sirens didn't just scare Jason away. They changed everything. By the time the police arrived, his car was already gone. But that didn't matter anymore. Because what happened that night? It didn't disappear with him. It stayed. Documented. Reported. Real. 2 officers stepped up to the door. Calm. Professional. The kind of presence that makes things feel official. Daniel opened the door before they even knocked. I'm the one who called, he said. They nodded, stepping inside. And just like that, what had been a private nightmare became a legal matter. Lauren sat on the couch, wrapped in a blanket again, but this time, she wasn't hiding. She was facing it, answering questions, telling the truth, fully, clearly, and I watched her closely as she spoke. No hesitation. No minimizing. No, maybe it wasn't that bad. Just the truth. For the first time, one of the officers took notes while the other asked gentle, but direct questions. Has he ever come here uninvited before? No. Has he ever threatened you? A pause. Then Lauren nodded slowly. Not directly, but the way he talks sometimes it feels like a threat. The officer didn't dismiss that. Didn't question it. He just wrote it down. Because that's how this works now. Everything matters. Daniel stood nearby. Quiet. Observing. Only stepping in when necessary. And when he did, his words were precise. Clear. Unshakable. He was informed not to make contact, Daniel said. He ignored that. The officer nodded. That will be noted. I stood in the corner of the room, watching it all unfold. And I felt something I hadn't expected. Not just anger. Not just relief. But validation. Like the world was finally seeing what had been hidden. After about 20 minutes, the officers finished taking statements. One more thing, one of them said looking at Lauren. If he contacts you again, or shows up, you call us immediately. I will, she said. And I believed her. They left shortly after. The door closed. And the house fell quiet again. But it wasn't the same silence as before. This one felt grounded. Like something had been set in motion that couldn't be undone. Lauren leaned back against the couch. I can't believe this is real, she whispered. I sat beside her, brushing a strand of hair from her face. It is, I said softly. And you're handling it. She looked at me. I don't feel strong. I gave a small, knowing smile. You don't have to feel strong to be strong. Daniel stepped into the room, loosening his tie slightly. It's moving faster than I expected, he said. I looked up at him. What is? He met my eyes. The case. Lauren sat up. Case, she repeated. Daniel nodded once. Because of tonight, because he showed up after being warned. This isn't just about a restraining order anymore. A small pause. Then. This is escalating. Lauren's face shifted. Not fear. Not exactly. More like realization. What does that mean? She asked quietly. Daniel didn't soften it. It means consequences are no longer optional. I felt that settle in the room. Heavy. Final. Lauren looked down at her hands. For him, she asked. Daniel's answer was simple. Yes. Silence filled the space again. But this time, no one felt unsure. A few minutes passed. Then Lauren's phone buzzed. We all looked at it. No one moved right away. Finally, she picked it up. Her expression changed instantly. What? I asked. She turned the screen toward us. It wasn't Jason. It was Diane. A message. Short. Cold. Different from before. You've gone too far. If you don't stop this, you have no idea what you're about to bring on yourself. I felt my jaw tighten. After everything. After all of this. Still threatening. Still refusing to see it. Lauren looked at Daniel. What do I do? He didn't hesitate. Nothing. She blinked. Nothing. He nodded. You don't respond. You don't engage. You don't step into their chaos. I crossed my arms. She hasn't learned anything, I said. Daniel glanced at me. No, he agreed. But she's about to. Lauren looked between us. Confused. Why? Daniel's expression didn't change. Because now, he said calmly, she's involved. That landed. Daniel. I said slowly. What are you planning? He didn't answer immediately. Just picked up his briefcase. Opened it. And pulled out another file. Thicker than the last one. I was hoping it wouldn't come to this, he said. But after that message. He closed the file gently. It has. Lauren's voice was barely above a whisper. What's in that? Daniel looked at her. Straight. Steady. Everything she thought no one would ever look into. And in that moment, I realized something. This wasn't just about protecting Lauren anymore. This was about tearing down an entire system that allowed this behavior to exist in the first place. And Diane? She had just made herself part of it. My son-in-law slapped my daughter at the Thanksgiving dinner table, and his mother laughed. That's how this all started. And now, everything that followed was about to end. The next morning didn't feel like the others. There was no panic. No confusión. No waiting. Just clarity. Lauren sat at the kitchen table, a cup of coffee in her hands. This time she actually drank it. Slowly. Calmly. Like someone who had finally stepped out of a storm. I watched her from across the room. And for the first time in days, I didn't see fear. I saw strength. Daniel walked in already dressed, already prepared. Briefcase in hand. Focus in his eyes. Today's the day, he said simply. Lauren looked up. For what? He met her gaze. For everything to come together. Now let me tell you something. Revenge? It's loud. Emotional. Messy. But what Daniel did. This wasn't revenge. This was consequence. By 10:00 a.m., we were all sitting in a quiet, formal room. Neutral ground. Lawyers. Officials. Paperwork. The kind of place where truth doesn't get twisted. It gets recorded. Jason was already there. And I barely recognized him. Gone was the confidence. Gone was the control. He looked smaller. Not physically, but in every way that mattered. Diane sat beside him. Perfect posture. Tight expression. Still holding onto that last thread of pride. But I could see it. The cracks. Lauren sat next to Daniel. Not behind him. Not hidden. Beside him. Where she belonged. The meeting started. Calm. Professional. Unavoidable. Jason's lawyer tried first. This situation has been escalated unnecessarily, he said smoothly. We're hoping to resolve this privately. Daniel didn't even look at him. No, he said calmly. Just that. No explanación. No negociación. Just, no. And that was the moment Jason realized. This wasn't something he could talk his way out of. Then the evidence started. Not dramatic. Not emotional. Just facts. Statements. Records. Witness accounts. Workplace complaints. Employment history. Patterns. Everything Daniel had been building, piece by piece, now laid out in the open. Jason tried to interrupt once. That's not. Let them finish, his own lawyer whispered sharply. And he did. Because for the first time, he didn't have control over the narrative. Then came Lauren. She spoke clearly, steadily. Nos checking. No hesitación. She told them everything. Not just the slap, but the years behind it. The control. The fear. The silence. And when she finished, the room was quiet. Not awkward. Not tense. Just settled. Because the truth has a way of doing that. Diane tried one last time. This is being blown out of proportion, she said. Families go through things. This shouldn't ruin lives. Daniel finally looked at her. And when he spoke, his voice was calm, but final. Accountability doesn't ruin lives, he said. Avoiding it does. Silence. The decision didn't take long. The restraining order? Granted. Immediate. Enforced. The investigation? Escalated. Formally documented. And Jason? He didn't say a word. Not at the end. Not when it was over. Because there was nothing left to say. Diane sat still, staring ahead. That confidence she walked in with? Gone. And for the first time, she didn't laugh. We walked out together. Lauren between us. Sunlight hitting her face as we stepped outside. She stopped for a second, took a deep breath, and closed her eyes. I feel free, she whispered. I reached for her hand, squeezed it gently. You are, I said. Daniel stood beside us, quiet as always. But I knew him. And I knew this wasn't the end for him either. Because men like Jason? They don't just face consequences in one room. Those consequences follow them. In every job application. Every background check. Every door that quietly stays closed. And Diane? She would remember this too. Not because someone yelled at her. Not because someone argued. But because for the first time, someone didn't let her look away. That laugh she gave at the dinner table? It cost her more than she ever expected. As for me, I stood there, watching my daughter stand taller than she had in years. And I realized something. Sometimes, all it takes is one moment, one line crossed, one person who says, enough. And everything changes. If you made it this far, just remember, real strength isn't loud. Sometimes, it's the quiet decision to never accept less than you deserve again.